Hello all, thanks for joining us on Two Analyzers and Beyond, the talk show where two analyzer folks discuss the process analytics world and topics beyond analyzers. Hi, I'm Corentin Thierry, Sales Manager here at BARTEC US for Process Analyzer Technology PAT Group. And I'm very excited about today's show. My guest is no other than my former boss from my pre-BARTEC company, Debra Hall. So without further ado, Debra, I would like to welcome you to the show.
Thank you, Corentin. It's nice to be here.
How are you doing today?
Very good.
So, tell us a bit more about yourself. We've known each other for a long time. I mean, it's been what? 10 years now? 7 years? Something like that?
It's been more than 5 and less than 10. I've stopped counting.
It's been, as I said, a few years since we've worked together, but even when I met you, you have a pretty nice resume to yourself. You've been working now as a work for quite some time. You've been very high up in a worldwide global analyzer company. You've now started your own company. I mean, this is no small feat, Debra.
Well,
why don't you tell us a bit about your background?
Wow, I don't know where to begin. I've had a lot of experience. I started in the world of analyzers pre-2K. I'm going to say, closer to 30 years ago. I was about 5. But I started out as a product manager and working with portable analyzers, and then I've grown into product line manager, then sales manager, then sales director, and it just kind of blossomed as things grew up. Exactly. And over the last, since we've met, I've been working with a lot of different types of analyzers for processing.
Yes.
So, measuring anything and anything, whether it's, gases, liquids. So that's kind of where we...
So are we now allowed to call you an expert?
No, I'm still learning. But, excuse me, but yeah, I wouldn't consider myself an expert. Maybe some other people might, but yeah, I'm learning every day.
Yeah, it's a tough industry, to become an actual expert. There's so many products and methods and measurement and this and that.
Yeah, there's a lot of different technologies to make measurements. There's a lot of different reasons to use the different technologies. There's a lot of different processes that need certain aspects for measurementation. So there's a lot involved.
Then we'll leave it at a very knowledgeable person. How is that?
I like that. That's good.
So the part that I'm also very interested in is you now started your own company.
Yes.
Elementale.
Yes, Elementale Enterprises.
There you go, so that we can all see it. Yeah. Why don't you tell us a bit more about Elementale?
Well, so Elementale got started a little bit over a year ago.
Okay. And
our goal is to help customers. We engineer solutions, sustainable process solutions. In fact, that's in our slogan. The E at the end of Elementale is for engineering. Okay. And the reason why we chose the name Elementale is because we deal with all the elements. We deal with liquids, gases, fire, earth, wind, and water.
Okay.
All right. So our goal is to help customers reduce waste and reduce costs, reduce, reuse, recycle. And our goal, we try to pick projects where our customers will see a return on investment of 18 months or less.
Oh, that's very interesting. I actually didn't realize that when we spoke. So that's your target.
Yes.
That's a very smart move.
Because a lot of companies, as you know, people move. We have shareholders, not we, they. Yeah. There are shareholders involved, and so a lot of projects need to.
Yes, they need to move fast.
They need to move fast.
So you can justify.
So you can justify it. So that's where we help our customers pick those projects. We have worked and we have partnered with the Department of Energy to help do that. And a lot of our projects is to help reduce energy. Because if you design for energy efficiency, everything else falls into place. Safety, compliance, product throughput, everything falls into place.
I find this very, very interesting, and the reason I say this is because, as you know, BARTEC is a German company, so our headquarters, and I will say that the core of our business remains in Europe and specifically in Germany. And a lot of the applications that we have for the analyzers instrumentation and pretty much all the stuff that BARTEC does is actually for energy optimization. And it's interesting that you're bringing this up because here in the US, I remember I used to sell viscometers, and one of the big pitch, because that company was also from Europe, from France specifically, yes, was, well, we measure viscosity, so we optimize the amount of heat needed to liquefy, if you will, or maintain at a certain viscosity the product for pumps and basically energy reduction. It was and I would always get told, like, we don't care. We just heat it as hot as we can. The natural gas is so cheap, and across the ocean, it's a big deal. And what I find interesting, and which is why I'm bringing it up, and what you're saying is that I'm starting to notice that this is, I don't think creeping is the right word, but it's becoming more and more prevalent also in the US, where that kind of reply used to be told maybe 10 years ago. When I have a similar conversation now with no longer viscometers but other products, there's a lot more interest where people are like, oh yeah, reducing by even if it's 1 or 2% our energy consumption is interesting because it's thousands and thousands of dollars every year. So
exactly,
yeah, I think it's I think it's very interesting.
Exactly.
Very interesting.
And that's exactly, you're absolutely right. The folks in the U.S. Globally, I mean, there's always the exception to the rule. There's companies that want to do best in class, measurement control, but a lot of companies were never interested because natural gas was cheap.
Yeah.
Now. And now, gas has gone up, but even more so, there's a lot more rebates and incentives from the government for customers to, try to, well, reduce emissions, reduce energy, but really, when you start looking at energy on a whole, reducing by 1% in a company level could give them a substantial payback.
It's a lot of money.
It is.
I mean, I'm assuming even if you take away the government subsidies, just strictly from a
just
savings
an operations
of energy.
point of view. It's
huge.
It's huge.
I can see that.
So.
I remember visiting a big refinery in Beaumont. I think it was a year or two ago, something like that. And I didn't know, how big a power plant does a refinery have? And out of curiosity, we were talking about energy requirements, and I said, so how big is your power plant? I was thinking 500 kilowatts, and no, I think it was 300 megawatts. That's the size of the power plant. And they're yeah, we have a power plant that can run a small city, and that's for one site.
One site.
So, a place like this, 1%, that's a lot of money.
It's a lot of money.
It's a lot of money, and across so many industries.
Exactly. So that's, and again, partnering with the DOE, the Department of Energy, they have a global goal in the U.S. to help reduce the energy usage throughout the U.S. by 20% over 10 years.
Okay.
So our goal is 3% per year, if we can help. If we can add that, add to that. So that's what we do.
That's a beautiful mission.
Well, thank you. And again, as we do, we do liquids, gases, vapor, solids. We do whatever we need to do to help customers, have reduce their energy, reduce their water usage, have a closed cycle. So these are some types of applications. Because we do engineering, everything is
it's all
different.
Custom.
It's all custom, it's all different. But these are the types, waste gas as fuel. That's a big one. That's one that we're doing a lot of as we speak. There's a lot of waste gas, like in some industries putting it in the flare. Putting the gas in the flare, it's going up the stack. Why not use it to fuel an oven? Why not use it to fuel a dryer? Why not use it, put it in a solvent recovery unit? So
if I may just ask for, I wasn't familiar with that terminology until you brought it up, and maybe some of our viewers are not. What do you call waste gas?
Well, waste gas is fuel that is used, let's look at the chemical industry or the oil and gas industry. It's product that they've used maybe to make, they've used gases to make product. And now there's leftover waste. So what do they do with that? What do they do with it? Whether it's ethylene, whether it's benzene, whether it's...
I think normally they just flare it, or I don't know about normally, but often.
Often they flare it. So, and what happens with the flare, I mean,
emissions.
It's emissions, it's all of that. And really, they have to keep the flare going. So now they're using natural gas all of the time to keep the flare going so that when they have waste gas, they stick it in the flare. Well, why not take that waste gas and use it as fuel for the flare? And not use natural gas, as an example.
I think that's very interesting. Flares are such a big controversy. A few months ago, I was in California talking with one of our customers, and I remember we had an entire dinner conversation about flares in California and how that specific engineer, I shouldn't say mocking is not the right word, but was comparing practices here in Texas where you just flare anything and everything whenever you need it, and for them it's like, oh my, we're gonna have to flare.
Yeah, oh that's
get half of the plant together, we need to figure this out before we do it.
Exactly, what else can we do before flaring? Exactly, so it is a big controversy or big subject, but that's one of many types of applications. Coming back to online measurement in the analyzer world, the big thing is everybody, if they're not measuring their product and they have varying concentrations, then they have to oversize their equipment, their reactors and their process equipment.
Oh, because it's poorly designed,
because they have to go by worst case
scenario. All
right, so if they monitor, coming back to what you were saying about viscosity, well, all of a sudden, if you're monitoring, then you can, the customer, the company can turn down their heat, build up their heat as needed. It's varying, and now they can save energy. So that's really the philosophy. So we get involved, again, the thermal management, carbon capture, something that's going on now with carbon capture. The government is starting to give $50 for every 100 pounds of CO2 that they capture.
I didn't know that.
Yep. So now what's happening is there are companies who are building, the salt domes?
Yes.
Well, now they're building salt domes to store CO2. They're repurposing some older pipelines to transfer CO2.
That's very interesting.
Because you can use CO2 as a fuel.
Huh.
And we can help with that. So that's so that's the big thing now with the whole carbon capture and sequestration. But yeah, $50 for every 100 pounds.
I didn't know that. That's very interesting.
Well, good. I gave you. I taught you something.
That's why I invite very knowledgeable people, because they know stuff I don't, and they can teach me and teach everyone watching. That's the whole point.
Oh my goodness. So yes, very knowledgeable. I like that term.
You told me not to use the other term.
No.
Let's find a suitable, equivalent.
Yes.
Let's put it like that.
Oh, that's funny. So that's now this is so that's all gases and heating, and in our moisture world, fluid world, water world, we can optimize cooling towers. We can help clean water up. There's a whole bunch of things that we can do to help customers use, reuse, and use their water the right way. We can, even with mixing concrete. For its viscosity measurements, it's making sure the water's, the water is the right, it doesn't have particulates and all that stuff. So there's just so many different ways that we can help our customers be sustainable.
That's very good.
Yeah.
So if you were to give a 1-minute elevator pitch to whoever's listening to this, what would you tell them?
I would tell them that Elementale Enterprises, we can help you reduce your energy costs, reduce waste, make you more profitable, and give you an 18-month ROI, being sustainable. And we break it down in the simplest and most fundamental way.
Yeah,
instead of additive engineering, we reduce the problem to its source.
That's very good. That's very cool.
So that's what we do. Elementary, my dear Watson.
Priceless. Priceless. So all this is work. Now, I always like to ask people, work is maybe half our lives. We have a life outside of work, and we have hobbies. So I usually take this time so what are your hobbies, Debra?
Well, my first hobby is my family. I've got my family, loving husband, wonderful son, wonderful stepdaughter. But my passion is gaming.
Really?
Yes.
Now, that's something I did not know. And that's something I'm very curious about, because I very much love gaming too. So, we could spend hours discussing this, but...
We could, but...
what's your favorite game?
Oh, well, what's my favorite game?
If you had to pick one.
Yeah, but there's all the games on the phones and stuff. The style, oh my goodness. I would have to say, and maybe this is showing my age, but the style would be like the Bejeweled Blitz type. You know, but there's so many of those now out that there's, you know, but I got started with the Rubik's Cube way back in the day, and I got to a point where I could solve the Rubik's Cube in 38 seconds. I never went on, you know, I wanted to go to the competition, but I was, whatever, 12 years old, I couldn't do it. That's how I got started.
That is quite a feat. 38 seconds from any position?
From any position. I can't do it now. I've forgotten all of that. I've forgotten more than I remember because I was 12.
Still, being able 38 seconds at a 12-year-old is that's a pretty impressive feat.
And then afterwards, after that, I started going to the video arcades. And my parents would work, they were working, and so what they would do is they would give my brother and I $10. Now we're talking Pac-Man time, so you know, late 70s, early 80s, and we would be there all day, every day, all summer. So what started happening was I could do things like, you know, Defender and Asteroids on 1/4 for 6 hours. And that's kind of how things evolve. So yes, you know, there's lots of games that are out there that I will do.
Debra, I am amazed.
What's your favorite game?
Oof, so I'll have to say, I really like RPGs very much.
Okay.
And I don't really play a lot anymore, just time, family, and everything. Once in a while I'll do, but there's a game that's called Might and Magic, where you have a party of adventurers and you fight dragons and everything. It's just fantastic. Yep. I have replayed that game 10 times.
Wow.
Like I know the entire game on the back of my head, like every secret, every door, everything. I just
see that you would do well with my son because he's into those games. You know, I'm into the times. Like I want to beat my time.
Oh,
I want to beat my time. I want to beat my time. Whatever the games are that I can beat times.
And the funny thing, and which is why it's interesting you're bringing this up. My wife was gone not long ago. She was away for some time, and I almost reinstalled Might and Magic to play it again while she was gone. I decided not to do it because then I wanted to do other things around the house, mow the yard, just be with our pets.
Yeah.
But so
that's interesting.
I've played that game, and you said you started at 12. Yeah, that's. I was probably around that age when I played it for the first time.
Yeah.
And I think I've played it. I've done a full playthrough every 2 years since then.
Yeah. Wow.
I'm sure I did it last year during COVID. I don't really count when I do them anymore because it happens often.
It just happens often.
But yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. That's cool.
Yeah.
We're gonna have to find some games that we can play together. When the iPod came out, not the iPod for music, but the iPod, like we have the iPhone now.
Yes.
And there was the iPod that you can have.
Yes.
And my husband said, well, I'm going to get you this iPod because you can download music. And I said, I don't need it. And he's telling me all the good things. You can have pictures on it. And I'm like, I don't need it. He goes, you can download games. I went,
I want one.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
It's fun. But it really gives me an escape.
Yeah.
It does give me an escape, and I love it, and it just keeps the brain nimble. And just all those things.
It's important. Yeah, it's important. Well,
I just found out that, I learned something more about you.
That was quite defined because I never would have expected this, but I'm happy to have a fellow gamer in here with us.
Yeah.
And all right, going back maybe a bit more to the business, I was mentioning this earlier, but you're also a member. I think you're actually a chair. I might have my terminology wrong. In a local industry association, the GCIC. Can you just share a few words with us?
Yes, Gulf Coast Industrial Group. It's a contractors group where we try to bring contractors together to help them get into companies. Yep. Okay, and it was started and formed in Lake Charles, Louisiana, and now we've got different chapter branches, and I'm the president of the Woodlands Conroe chapter branch. Okay. So it is a group that is 1,000 members strong. Yep. And it's cool because it's a really good networking group, and people get projects and ideas, and we help the industry.
Although I haven't re-registered yet, it's on my to-do list, but I've attended many of the meetings, and to whoever watches this and is in our Conroe Woodlands area, I invite you to join. It's very interesting. I really like the structure you have where you talk about current projects and then just exchange information.
Yeah.
I was going to say free. No, it's not free to join. The membership is very reasonable, but it's a free exchange. I think that's how you say it, and that's what I really liked about it.
Yes.
Just because it's a it's for the betterment, if I may say so, of the industry. And it really benefits everyone. So
that is exactly. And we do have guest speakers. We try to get guest speakers from the industry. We're getting guest speakers from local universities as well. You know, we want to be a resource.
Yep.
You know.
And I think you've succeeded at this.
Wow, thank you.
And we'll have you back. We'll have full discussion on GCIC because there's
That's
so much
a whole
to
other
say. Yeah, it's a full different topic. So, a few questions for you, Debra.
Yes.
You've been in this industry for so long. You must have some crispy anecdotes or some interesting thing to tell us.
Oh, crispy anecdotes.
Well, I say crispy, but
I like it.
Fun, fun things about it. So I'll start with one.
You start with one, okay.
So BARTEC manufactures analyzers that have different method of protection. So one of them is a purge. The other one is just it's an EXD, so it's a flame-proof or explosion-proof, commonly known as enclosure. So it has bolts all around the cabinet. And as you know, some of the previous companies we worked for would sell the same type of analyzers or the same type of method of protection. So I remember once going on site to look at an analyzer, and I see all the bolts, and I tell the guy, like, can you get the torque wrench or the hammer, I forget the name, to get, because I don't want to just, go with the crank and remove something. They're like, oh, no. We glued them on there just for show. And he just goes in the back, removes the nut and the bolt, and he opens, and you say, like, they're all glued. There's like 12 or 16, and they're just one for show.
That's funny.
And of course,
glue has flammables in it.
Glue has flammable. I mean, it's like the worst thing you can do. At this point, we're not liable, so it's like,
right.
Oh, that's really interesting. But stuff like that. I'm sure you've seen stuff like that.
Oh, absolutely. One time there was a customer that didn't. First thing I'll say is any online measurements. The minute a customer gets the measurement and puts it online, the readings are completely different than what their expectation was. And it's normally different for the worst. They normally think that they're operating much better. And so the first thing they say is, oh, it's got to be your analyzer.
It's not working well.
It's not working well. So that happens every time. It's gotten to a point that now I tell customers, don't be surprised, your readings are going to be much different. Like, just get it in your head that it could be much different. But one time, a customer had an analyzer online, and the readings were different, and they didn't like the readings, and So we go out to help them, to show them that everything is what it's supposed to be. And it turns out that where they had like the probe and how they had it connected, like the gas would come into the probe and it would go through this flame arrestor. Well, don't ask me how, but there was a spider who made a web, and she actually had eggs in that flame arrestor area. So that kind of stopped the gases from going into the analyzer the right way, and it was really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, wow.
So after that happened once, and then I've heard it happen several other times and several other
with
different analyzers. Spiders.
So it's the first time I hear spiders. I usually hear snakes.
Yeah, no, I never heard of snake.
Purge boxes, they'll open the purge box and there's a snake that.
Never heard of that one.
But especially like in Louisiana, in South Louisiana, I've heard of a few people tell me stories about it. But spiders, no, first time.
So a lot of times now people will put like in front of the probe, they'll put like a net. There's
some sort of mesh.
A mesh. That's the word, because then that keeps, for some reason, that keeps the spiders out. So. The first time I heard it, it was like, wow. Yeah. But then
really?
I had heard it over the decades. I have heard of this more than once. So
that's funny. That is.
But I never heard about the snakes.
I had heard it once or twice before, and then I was chatting with people in the past few months, and I think it came back up like 3-4 times of like, oh yeah, the open analyzer, just a snake jumped out at the tech, he fell on the ground.
Wow.
I mean, fortunately for them, nothing happened, he just fell, so no OSHA recordable, but that's a very interesting OSHA recordable. We open the analyzer, snakes jump at us, tech falls, injures, and it's like, What can you do to fix
and
this?
how did you
anyways?
how did the snake get in there? So interesting, So, this is where you sit there and you go, okay, explosion proof. There's ATEC certifications and ISEX and FM and all these certifications. Well, nobody thought about snakes or spiders.
Yeah. That's the funny part of it, when you think about it. Do you actually know why we call a computer bug a bug?
No.
It's a very similar story. So if you go back to the very early computers, they would fit in massive rooms, and they'd have actual transistors, light transistor, the light bulb type transistors. And so I won't quote like whom said it and when it happened, but let's call the 50s, probably something like that. And so the computer was not working. So someone eventually decided to go in the computer room, which back then was probably like a
room.
30 by 50 feet room and they found an actual bug that was in one of the transistors, which is why it was not working.
Wow.
And that's where the term computer bug came from.
Interesting.
So
here we are.
Exactly. So.
Yeah, cool.
But I'll remember the spider ones. If I ever have this issue,
and I'll remember the snake one.
Yeah.
I'm not going on. Yeah, very cool.
Another thing I wanted to ask you, you went from global corporation to running your own business, small company, hopefully very soon, very large global corporation.
That's the goal.
That's the goal.
Yes.
How was the change? What, because it's obviously two different worlds, going from being technically an employee to owning your company, from a very large company to a small company. So I guess walk us through I shouldn't say the process, but just, how the experience is going from one world to the other.
That's a good question. I've learned a lot, going from global companies, high up in global companies, I knew a set of skills. Managing, owning my own company, it's a completely different set of skills. Now, the good thing is that because we're on the path to grow, and we want to grow and be a global company, we have a lot of processes in place that were kept because of the global company.
Yeah.
So we don't have to start from scratch, The bad news is that you get the employees who are like, well, why do I have to fill out 3 forms when I could just go next door? I'm doing the same job. I'm doing all 3 jobs. It's like, because in another month or another year, you're not going to be doing that job. So we have to have the process in place. So that's been interesting, in that way, because it is like, well, okay, ISO, we can sign off documents, but it's the same person signing 3 places. It just doesn't work, But we do it to keep the habit going.
It's going to help you a lot when the company grows, because it's a problem that you see, and I'm fortunate where I haven't really had to deal with this too much in my career. Yours is much longer than mine. Right. But
you're getting up there now.
Starting, yeah, we're getting there. We're starting. This is the most painful thing ever when you get into a company that's starting to grow and the processes are not in place. So you're always fighting to go back, and then just like, oh, we're missing this, but we need to document
or to change the culture. And it's hard when people say, well, we've always done it that way. Yeah. It's like, but if we want to grow, you change or die. So we've already set things in place, but it is interesting because we all get a chance to see how everything works. Yes. And the core people that I have now, obviously they're going to be the leaders in the company as we grow, and they get it. Yeah. And every single one of them have said over the past year, they're like, we've learned so much in this past year than we have for 5 years or 7 years or whatever it is in the industries, because we're seeing how everything fits together. Yeah. And I'm like, well, that's kind of cool.
That's good.
That's cool.
That's really good.
So it's fun, and it is fun. Yes, the buck stops here, and I ultimately have to be the one who makes the final decisions on doing this, that, or the other thing. It's interesting, and the whole risk assessment is completely different now.
Yeah, because it's your money now.
It's my money now. Yes.
Yes.
And my legal, implications. I always say to my people, as long as whatever you do is legal, moral, and ethical.
It's funny, we have the same criteria at BARTEC.
Yeah.
It's very interesting.
But
it's the
you
same
know, we have to change, and we have to navigate through different through different eras. You know, the society is changing.
Yep.
You know, but just keep it legal, moral, and ethical, and keep the costs down. But yeah, it's very interesting. Yeah.
I think it's a good business practice. I mean, it might make sense, but as you know, a lot of companies do not necessarily think like that.
No.
And just by following those three things, here at what Stefan, my boss, who you met earlier, says is if this was to be published on the front page of the newspaper and you'd be okay with it, then go for it.
Exactly.
If you'd say like, no, I wouldn't want this to be on the first page of the newspaper, then it probably means that one of those three boxes you mentioned is not being checked.
Yeah. Exactly. So, yeah. That's good. That's another.
Yeah, I thought it was a very good. I thought it was very good philosophy.
Yeah. Cool.
So you're saying the world is changing. It's been quite an interesting time we have now behind us. The future. Where do you see our industry going?
Well, if we're talking oil and gas, I see it changing.
Okay.
Okay. If we're talking other industries, they're all changing. Everything is changing. Again, being in the sustainable, marketplace, what I see in the oil and gas world is that the companies have actually been working on so many sustainable processes for 20 and 30 years. But it comes back to resources. Yeah. And it's like, okay, well, I want to put in gas pipelines to move CO2. Well, it's an infrastructure change, and that takes a lot of momentum to get it going. So now that we as a society are really, really pushing for that, and funding and helping with supporting the government supporting these projects.
And the public, and
the public,
helps a lot.
Everything, it's all of it. Everybody's behind it. So the change is here, and the change is going to grow, and it's going to move rather quickly because a lot of these companies already have ideas, and now they can actually get resources to realize them.
In line with this, I think what we're seeing a lot is biofuels. So traditionally, BARTEC, especially our analysis division, has been really focused on downstream refining and transportation pipelines. And what we're seeing a lot now, they're not really building any refineries, or they're doing some expansions here and there, but a lot of it is biofuels. People are getting heavily into biodiesel. So we've been working on a lot of biodiesel projects, and I think it fits right in what you're saying. There's just, between government subsidy, public opinion, there's a push for it. Yeah,
the momentum's finally, the push is finally picking up momentum. Yep. We're not in the moment, we have momentum now. Yeah. So, that's, so I think change is good. Change promotes stress, but it also promotes growth. Yeah. And the companies most of these companies are trying to get on that change, but it's going to take time.
Yeah.
Nothing happens overnight.
No. Rome was not built in a day.
I know, but we're seeing things that we've been talking about when we were in college.
Yeah.
And now we're actually seeing the realities coming.
That must be fun. About having, the academic/theoretical view of it and then in your lifetime actually seeing it being realized and coming to, it's like, oh yeah, that brings up memories. I never thought I would see it.
Exactly.
And then it comes to
fruition. Exactly.
Yeah, that must be really interesting.
Yes. Well, you should be knowing that now. You're getting into that.
I'm starting to. Yeah, I'm starting.
You've been in this industry for a decade?
Yeah, slightly over now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah.
You're becoming an SME too.
Time flies. Very knowledgeable person.
A very knowledgeable person.
No, I would never say that. I would never say that. I have a few more questions for you. What are customers looking for now? When we talk with people, I was saying earlier that before it was, I was reflecting on this. It used to be all about increasing production, and we're talking decades ago. Then it become all about quality, and I mean quality is still a big thing, but I want to say maybe the 90s, the 80s, we started focusing more on quality. Then came the 2000, 2010, and it's been a focus on safety. And what are customers asking for now? I mean, all of the previously mentioned, but they're probably asking for more now. They're asking.
In fact, talking to some of these customers over the last week, they're all coming out with the same thing. There's twofold. What customers want from their vendors is to give them a problem and take it off their hands because they don't have the people. They don't have the resources. For whatever reason, there's a skill gap. There's a skill set gap in the industry, and we knew that back coming Y2K. So you've got people who are ready to retire and they have the knowledge with them, and you got the up and coming that don't. So they go, you know what? We have our vendors. We're going to depend on you to really be the expert for your stuff, and just here, take it. We need a drink, so please just, we need a drink that's going to give us vitamins and do all this. Please make it. Whatever it is, please do it. We don't have the time. We don't have the resources to research, and we don't have the confidence in our research. So we're looking for expertise. So that's the first thing that they're looking for their vendors. What they're looking for on their end for their customers, especially with sustainability, and that's really a big thing, at least again in my world, is they want to show their customers that they are doing it. It's not just talk. They're not just talking about the sustainability. They're actually doing it, and they want their customers to see that perception that they're like, okay, wait a minute, 1995 we were all about safety. For 10 years we talked about safety. Okay, all of a sudden 2005 to 2015, we talked about operations and quality and how to improve and internal. Well, now 2015 to 2025, we want to show that we're being best in class and we're actually coming in as leaders in our industry and providing valuable, sustainable processes and products. That's what I see.
It makes a lot of sense. I really, especially, so we're just starting to get into the more sustainable, because historically analyzers are kind of a niche market, as you know, and especially physical property is even more of a niche. So we really never got too much into that, the sustainable. But now that biodiesel, I keep on mentioning biodiesel just because there's so many projects going on, but we're seeing that a lot where people are actually requesting it. And so we see that too, probably not to the extent as you are, but we are definitely, I can definitely, I totally understand. The one part we do see a lot though is the lack of knowledge that our customers have. And that we totally see, because what I think is going on, and if you take major refiners or pipeline companies, or even if you go outside of the oil and gas, pharmaceutical, they're actually focusing on their expertise. And to get back into the oil and gas, which would be, for example, making gasoline. Like that's what they focus on, like going from crude to gasoline, like all the process and everything. How they get the data for the measurement, they're diverting away from that. They're like, we have people that have knowledge, but that's not our expertise. Our expertise is that entire flow path where you go from that thick crude all the way to that thing that you put in your car. And the data points will rely on you. And we're also seeing that a lot. A lot, where they're really focusing on what it is that they know, they own, IP basically.
And that makes sense. Especially in some of these processes, some of these companies with processes that are very safety challenging and everything else. They can't really, it's better to focus on what they know and then have somebody else come in with their expertise. I think, I don't know about you, Corentin, but I think in 10 years from now, we're going to see a totally different landscape.
Oh, I think
in society, just corporate-wide, just everything, the Internet of Things, just everything.
Yeah, I think we're already seeing it. Like, who here hasn't been working remote at some point in the past year? I'm sure some people have not. If you're running a critical plant or something like that.
But maybe their kids have been for school.
For their kids or their wives, husbands, or So that in a sense, in essence, is a pretty drastic change. I remember, talking with my dad, or even I'm assuming a few years ago in your career with previous companies, the idea of having people working remotely, you get laughed at for saying something like that. Just like it would never ever cross anyone's mind. Nowadays, it's just like standard practice. Just
standard.
And some companies, it's very interesting. A lot of companies are actually not going back to office, or they'll have
split shifts.
Split shifts, or an open office concept. Like you come in and we have 100 desks, so today up to 100 people if, you know, everyone else work from home.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, yeah, it'll be very interesting.
And you see the kids who are learning school this way,
Mm-hmm.
what, you know, since they have to be in technology now at 9, 10 years old, what are they going to bring to the table 10 years from now that we don't even know? So it's going to be interesting.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
And then last question, talking about changes, you and I had a conversation prior to that, and you mentioned something about new EPA regulations. I thought, with such a knowledgeable person as yourself of government regulation, and correct me if I'm wrong, EMACT?
EMACT, yes.
I never heard of this.
Okay, so EMACT is ethylene.
Okay.
Okay, MACT is the most achievable control technology.
Oh.
Okay, it's an EPA 40 CFR 60.
Please, let's quote this. I'm messing with you.
Right, I know. But it's all about the emissions on flares and the emissions. It's an emissions monitoring regulation that has been, if you remember EPA 60.18.
I do not.
For total sulfur.
Oh, subpart JA.
Subpart JA.
Yeah,
that's
yes.
40 CFR 60.18 subpart JA. So it's all about emissions. So now what they've done is the EMACT ruling is really specifically to help reduce emissions even more. That's the whole point, is to reduce emissions.
I didn't. That's very interesting.
And so they have it. There's several parts, and this is for ethylene producers.
Mm-hmm.
And they've got several parts. So one is the flare stack, and what they can do is if a company has a lot of hydrogen, because ethylene producers do have hydrogen as a byproduct, when they put that through their flare, they
offset?
It's an offset. So you can use, even though hydrogen's BTU is about 300 BTUs per standard cubic feet, and methane is 3 times more.
Yeah, I was going to say 1,000.
1,000.
Something like that.
They can use the hydrogen in lieu of methane because it burns smokeless and burns clean. And the same EMACT ruling also has RVP. It's a measurement for RVP, because with the vapor pressure for fuel blending companies, if the vapor pressure exceeds, I don't remember what that number, what the set point is, but right now they're making it lower.
Okay.
They're decreasing it. So anybody who's blending fuel, anybody who's doing anything with fuel, they've got to decrease their vapor pressure, their read vapor pressure.
That's interesting.
And so that's all part of the EMACT ruling. And right now, it's ongoing. And so there are different organizations, different company levels, like the top tier have to have everything put in place.
Yeah, I'm going to go back to Jay because I know Jay better, but I'm assuming they're using the same approach. You know, if you're above so many barrels, you start first.
You start first, and that goes down.
Yeah,
that's exactly it tiers down. Well, it's the same regulation. It's just now the next top.
Okay, I see what you say.
Yeah.
Okay, now I understand better, or now I kind of know better what you're talking about, because I remember back when I was working in sulfur, we were talking about subpart JA for refineries, and there was always that talk like there's a section of the EPA code or regulation that is applied to chemical plants,
which is the ethylene producers.
And I was digging about it, and I could never really find any. It's EMACT.
It's EMACT.
Now I know.
Yeah. So the refineries was the RSR rule.
Yep.
And this is EMACT, but it's still under the same umbrella.
I see.
It's all under the same umbrella, but that's now.
Very cool.
And with the sustainability talks and with carbon capture, and again, companies can get money for showing that they are not they're capturing the carbon, they're not emitting. It just makes sense for them. It's not just the EPA saying you will do this. In fact, it's hey, look what happens when you do this. We'll give you money. You know, we'll give you an incentive. Rewarding good behavior, I think, is what it is.
But this is, I think from my perspective, different people. I don't want to get into politics here. I think personally, I think it's a good thing for governments to help this. Otherwise, no one would do it.
Right.
You know, yes, we do pay taxes in it. I do think it's for a better future. So again, I don't want to get into the politics of it. That's just a personal point of view. It does not represent the opinion. You know, that's a personal point of view.
Well, you know what? Somebody has to help push it along. You know, and I think, you know, again, putting in place different infrastructures take a lot of money.
It does. It does.
Know, and if there's incentives to do it, people will do it.
Now, what I think is going to be very interesting is you and I are in this industry. So we probably have a better understanding and knowledge than, say, people that are not in this industry. But what I can tell you, what I can foresee happening is all of a sudden the EPA is going to be giving those big refineries credit. And I think it's going to be a really interesting discussion because people are going to ask, like, why on earth are you giving,
a multi-billion-dollar company more money?
More money because they're being clean. Anyways,
it's going to be an interesting.
It's going to be an interesting conversation. I still think it's a good idea, but it's going to be interesting.
Yeah.
We'll put it like that.
It will be.
Debra, I ran out of questions. I mean, I could have a lot more.
Yeah.
But I think I'm very, very thankful for you coming. I don't know if, maybe you had a few questions or if you wanted to ask something.
So for BARTEC, yes, I would. What would you say is your biggest value proposition?
So it really depends, because BARTEC has different business units. As I said at the beginning, I'm in the PAT group, our analyzer. So that's the official terminology. I really like to call it our instrumentation and analyzer systems group, because I think it gives a better idea of what we do. But we have that division that I work in, but we also have a division that does heat trace. We also have a division that assembles panels for all sorts of application. We also have a division that does, we call them enterprise mobility, so it's all your phones, your scanners. So
I'm impressed because I never knew that.
Yeah, actually,
because I'm always dealing with instrumentation. So
that's, before I joined BARTEC, I didn't really know about that too, and I came to realize I'm not comparing size-wise. I'm just comparing portfolio. It's very similar with some of the other big conglomerates. They'll have they'll have power. They'll have measurementation, they'll have transmission, they have, and I think BARTEC is just, it's kind of the same philosophy. I guess, once you reach a certain critical mass, you start to divest in all those different types of industries. The core of BARTEC, though, is safety.
Yeah.
That's really what, like, the motto of BARTEC is safety. We provide safe equipment for hazardous area. So all the stuff we do is safe. And that's really the value proposition of the entire company.
Yes.
For my group, safety is kind of that's what I tell people, because I'll have, colleagues from all over the world that are in different divisions, or even here within this office, and we'll be talking, and they'll bring that up, like, oh, we're safe. And for us in instrumentation and analyzers, it's kind of a given.
Right.
It's not something that you really are proud or that you boast about, because anyone that buys an analyzer expects it to be safe. So
that's the minimum standard.
Yeah, like if you don't meet this, don't even talk to me. So, that's a building stone or a stepping stone for the analyzer. What we provide really is high quality data. That's really what we do. Like, we provide high quality data to be able to optimize your processes. Whether it's, I like to break it down in four different parts. It can be for safety. So, applications like, we want to make sure the RVP of a product going in a pipeline is not too high so the pipeline doesn't blow up. That's like a typical safety. It can be a compliance one. So I'm thinking like some of the moisture measurement. For example, certain products, the law says you shouldn't have more than this much moisture. Like natural gas, for example, you can only have so much moisture. It's not technically limited moisture-wise, it's a BTU value. It requires to have at least this much BTU, but in a natural gas, what is the one that sucks out the most BTU? It's moisture. So this would be like a typical compliance application. Then you have just strictly optimization. I don't have anything that pops to mind, but just we're going to help you build more. By having, as I said, high quality data, you can have your thresholds or your set points much closer to the limit, so you can get a better production. And then finally, the last one we do a lot of is quality. So,
makes sense.
Gasoline, the U.S. consumes, I forget, it's a ridiculous number. It's like 300
trillion or some gallons a year or something.
I remember in the videos, I actually pulled a number out. It's like 300 million gallons a day, or it's either 300 million gallons or 300 million barrels a day. It's a huge number. I couldn't believe it. Of course.
We have 350 million people.
Yeah, exactly. So when you think about it, everyone consumes at least a gallon plus of gasoline here every day.
Yeah.
Again, I don't remember if whether it's gallons or barrels, it's still a huge number. And so, well, one of the things, gasoline, what you just said, RVP, it's true, it's a compliance reason, but it's also a QA/QC reason, because our engines in our cars are designed to run on a gasoline with a very specific spec. Yeah. If your RVP is off, I mean, I make the joke, like anyone that's run a lawnmower with a canister of gasoline that's like a year old will know what it is to run on a bad gasoline. Like it makes a lot of noise. It doesn't really, and you know.
It's true.
So that's what we really provide. Like our division, my division, the analyze instrumentation and analysis, we provide high quality data to operate in any of those four fields.
I like it.
That's really our value proposition.
Very good. Well, thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome. I need to thank you. Thanks a lot for joining us. That was actually, I learned a lot today.
Me too.
I'm really thankful.
Me too.
Thanks a lot for joining us.
Thank you for having me. This has been fun.
My pleasure. Folks, we'll say goodbye. We'll see you soon at another podcast. Thanks a lot for joining us. And then, again, Debra, thank you so much.
Thanks, Quentin.
You take care.
Bye. Yeah.
And it's a wrap.
And it's a wrap. That was fun.